Hello.
Hello,
Uh,
hello. This is, the first thing we're ever doing for Big Boy Boss Battles, and yeah, this is the first episode, and Sean's the actual host, so maybe he should be the one talking.
yeah, so me and Chimera will be working together for recording the videos, and we'll each be taking half of each of the rounds. So he'll take the bottom half of the first round pairings. I'll take the top half, and we'll just divide up the work, go through the videos a little bit faster that way.
Yeah, that way y'all can get your content faster.
Indeed. And so we've decided we'll do a showcase video showing off each of the entries, just sort of discussing some of the finer points, things we find interesting, things we note of particular interest, and just sort of our thoughts on how they might do in the upcoming battles. So I'm going to be starting, going through each of the designs that I reviewed, and so I'll be helming the camera. Chimera will be with me the whole time, and we'll
Yep.
just sort of go through each of these designs and give you our insights. So this is the first entry that I received, the Poyer Tea by Jiyoshi.
I called
And
it far, but I don't know what it actually is.
yeah, no,
I guess we'll have to ask them.
the name reminds me of something like German, or like what Ramstein might say, just like Poyer Tea, you know, just that sort of
I see, I
play
see.
play on the words, because like Poyer, it kind of like fire, and
I
Poyer
guess, I
Tea
guess.
is kind of like party. So,
So,
and
I thought French. That's what I thought, at least, but
it might be. I don't know. I'm not actually sure where the origin for Poyer comes from, but it sounded German to me. So I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I know there's a party reference because I mean,
yeah, it's a party
yeah,
mode.
yeah. So I mean, the general philosophy that I get from this particular entry is that the best defense is a strong defense, and the defenses on this, to me, are stronger than the offenses. I mean, it it feels like it has a little bit of everything. It's got a fairly hefty LAM system, 4 node, 4Q LAMs that can do 35,520 sustained DPS at 16.2 armor piercing, and has, yeah,
Thank goodness they
what,
went for that AP. That AP is really important.
right, targeting shells, which when you've got interceptor missiles going after the missiles, you've got SUs, closer CWIS, excuse me, close in weapon system, shooting for the missiles. It's got two 60 millimeter 6 barrel frag CWIS that's got 461.1 and 435.1 rounds per minute. So the CWIS, they're they're not quite equal, and I mentioned that to Joshi, and at this point, he just didn't really want to refix it. I had passed it back to him a couple of times, and the present iteration, it's a bit heavier than it was the first time. So some of um, the air propulsion is now underwater in the front. I mean, it's still above line in the back, but it's not broken, but some things got a little bent, I'd say, by some
Hopefully that doesn't affect anything.
updating. Yeah, I hope not, but I mean, like the Sea Whiz got added in, so I, I'm hoping that the changes are beneficial. The main weaponry also got changed slightly as far as their shell type. But yeah, so other things, this has interceptor missiles or as torps. So you've got eight, I think it's 3 meter interceptor torpedoes. You've got
Yeah, they
eight,
use larges, which are quite rare. Not
yeah,
never really
but
seen that much.
I kind of like the thought of large interceptors for the idea of large missiles coming in. Because, I mean, with this size of ship in the tournament, you'd expect that, like, a lot of missiles and torps would be at large size. So, like, having the large interceptors, it just sort of, it's amusing because you're not going to see it that often. But for a tournament like this, it actually kind of seems sensible to me. And you've also got for this 8 4 meter medium interceptor slash frag missiles. And I'm guessing that the frag was probably added in case they get close enough that the frag can just sort of spew over uh, the enemy parts and just maybe cause a little bit of incidental damage. But yeah, it's got 102 repair bots, which is right about there, for ships. There are some who bravely don't have any, but I'm I'm trying to keep the repair bots down to not too far over 100. Um,
I know I didn't grab any because I ran out of budget for overbuilding my guns.
oh no. Well, they are somewhat of a trade-off because each entry will receive 200,000 resources, and that does go directly to the plus in resources for for ammo, for fuel, for battery. But it also does go towards repairs, whatever's left. So, I mean, I definitely think that having them is a major advantage, but yeah, for certain ships, having too many might actually be a bit of a detriment if the battle runs long and they run out of ammo or such. But yeah, for this ship though, the firepower is pretty low compared to a lot of the other entries that I've seen. It's only 270.02,
Meanwhile,
and
there's some with just like overwhelmingly high numbers, like almost 1,000, I think, for one of them.
yeah, I've seen I think at least one that was over 800 and some that were over 600. But I have seen some that are down closer to this number, like in the 300 something zone. But this is definitely on the lower end of the spectrum. But the defenses could make up for that. At this point, it's a little hard to say. I mean, the beyond the interceptors, it also does have shield projectors, um, two on these front turrets, and then two up here in the front. But I mean, also another advantage being a front sider, it has super firing turrets. So I mean, I it's definitely been built with defense in mind. But as far as armament goes, it's got two 500 millimeter rail assisted APHE APS turrets that fire 44.2 rounds per minute with 40.31 firepower, 54.66 shell power, 0.16 in accuracy, which is actually pretty accurate for weaponry in this game, and 1,098 meters per second shell speed, which is pretty fast. That's definitely up there. They use 12,300 rail draw, but this thing, it's got some beefy batteries and a lot of space. The LAM system also uses quite a lot of energy. And 19 of that is for accuracy boost. So even though there's not a lot of power, they're probably going to be hitting, fairly accurately, not missing much. It also has one 500 millimeter rail assisted hollow point APS turret, which is the one in the back, and that's 70 rounds per minute, 111.56 firepower, and 95.64 shell power, 0.17 in accuracy, so still very accurate, and 1,139 meters per second shell speed, which is really kind of zipping along. And
Yeah.
and this
Um,
one, yeah, it's doing 12,302 thump at 31.1 thump armor piercing, which is 5 meters of kill depth. And for that, um, I've calculated, so if you were to have 5 metal beams stacked against each other, it would penetrate through each of them.
if
And
that's the hollow point shell you're talking about,
yeah,
wouldn't isn't it? Aren't you? Isn't it just the amount of damage it takes because it's 30 thump AP, right? So it's 2100. So
y-
shouldn't it just be the thump damage divided by 2100, and that's just the amount of metal beams it could take out.
right. It is just the basic damage. So thump damage ignores armor stacking, so it's just the base armor of
Sorry, I was just a little
the
bit confused because you said
yeah,
armor
yeah.
and you said 5 meters of fully stacked armor.
Right. Okay. I'll clarify that. So it would penetrate and kill 5 metal beams. The armor stacking in this particular case doesn't matter, but the amount of damage would destroy 5 metal beams um, as equivalent per shot. So I mean, and yeah, the and, being hollow point, the amount of armor that you can expect to have stacked for ships of this size, I do think that's a fairly decent choice.
And
Um,
then about the AFI guns, I can't really read anything on the screen due to the resolution of the screen share, so
oh, okay.
it's fine.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't really have anything particularly special about it, except the nice little resort pool here at the back, and play on words. Do you have any particular thoughts on the entry?
I think
Uh,
it's uh, I think it's quite interesting. I like the touch at the back, but like again, didn't you also do the specs for metal pen on the AFI turrets themselves? Or
oh yes, so for the front two turrets, they have a 3 meter kill depth. So that would actually be for the kinetic damage. Um, so they do 11,092 kinetic at 43.9 armor piercing, which means that if there are 3 metal beams stacked, they will pen all 3 and kill those beams. Um, they also do 2,482 high explosive damage at 10.4 meter radius. So, I mean, I do like the shell choice the uh, for the entry. I do, however, I've got to admit, I kind of feel compared to a lot of the other entries, it is undergunned, but the defenses certainly give it an element of resilience. And when there are some entries that have no actual active defense, uh,
I feel
the
slightly attacked.
well, I mean there are others
I'm
as
just
well.
joking, people, of course.
Yeah, I understand, but I feel that it's got like that Rocky Balboa effect. If it can last through the early stages, it has a chance. But if something can just simply overwhelm it, and I'm not sure with the way the changes have affected its dodging potential. Um, I mean, a lot remains to be seen, but yeah, my thoughts are that this has a good amount of survivability, but not a lot of punch compared to the other entries.
Yeah, and
And
John,
mm,
for future, I'll also just like to point out the fact that they put muzzle brakes on, even though this is a relatively large ship, is interesting. And also, um, we should probably speed up the next entries, otherwise we're going to have like a 4 hour long video just for
yeah,
pointing this out.
I
We already spent like I don't know what 20 minutes on this one.
I don't think it's been that long,
It's
but
5:30.
I'll try and keep it moving. Okay, so the next entry was actually the last entry I received. And need to wait for it to load in. It's Psychology's entry, the 150, and
You should
I need to.
pause cycle it so it mimics it in.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So there's, as you can see, a lot of uh, variety in the weaponry. Um, let's get some flyby of the ship itself. So I actually really like the design on this front here. That sort of like waffly, beveled, sort of almost scaly look.
The unintended side consequence of just the way that reflections work in a non-ray traced engine, and having that weird transition shape. It's
Yeah,
not really intentional. It's supposed to be smooth.
yeah, I get that, but I kind of do like the way it turned out. Nevertheless,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, it looks pretty good.
yeah, the weaponry, uh, each of these is just mimicked. So all
You
of the little
really have to put fit into the pretty relatively strict, like, simple weapon limits.
right, it does look very appealing, and it very much adds to the battleship um, style. I'm not sure if this is actually meant to be a replica ship or just based
Yes,
on.
it's supposed to be based on the A150 design, which is the quote unquote Super Yamato. And then
Okay.
and
Uh,
then the reference they used was probably the Shikishima from World of Warships, which is based on that design.
okay. I've personally not played World of Warships, so
I
like
barely played it.
anything I actually know on historical ships is based on Azure Lane, and it's like anime ship girls. So it, take anything I know historically with a grain of salt. But yeah,
Just
so
like history in general.
the uh, right, so the special features on this one, it is drivable. It's got 75 ammo makers, individual weapon AI, which is something I really like. In case an AI gets taken out, and each of the various turrets can have a separate aim point. It's got smoke generators for wave breaker effect up front as well. So when this thing is actually
Yeah, I
moving,
noticed those two things. I was like, what are those things? And yeah,
yeah,
what you just said just showed it off. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
yeah,
Also
actually,
about the whole multiple aim points thing. Sometimes it could be. I mean, sorry, I unheld my push to talk. I mean, sometimes it could be not so great of a thing because sometimes you want concentrated firepower. Say if you want to get through lambs or something, that's actually something I noticed when designing my ship. Like I still have single weapon AIs, but I have them set up as backup AIs instead now, so everything targets the same point anyways. But yeah, it's
okay,
kind of a thing.
I'll be interested to see how that does in battle for the ship. Whether they do concentrate any firepower,
If
or it
it's
like if they're on some sort of advanced AI, or
if
if
the
they,
main weapons are an API, then most likely, yeah, multiple aim points will help. I'm just saying, like, if you're going for a different, sometimes if you go for a different style, you might want concentrated fire more, like with a more lambs vulnerable shell type.
yeah,
Concentrating a single area make kind of is kind of more important.
yeah. This ship itself does not have a LAM system. It has uh, six 25-meter by 25-meter strength 10 superstructure shields. So basically, all around here, you can kind of see the light outline of them here. Um,
Surprised they didn't go full transparent for what is otherwise a semi-realistic build.
yeah, I mean, I like actually being able to take note of where they are. I mean, it helped me a little bit, finding them. So I mean, I can appreciate that. And also on the turrets in the front and back here. So I mean, those are on the turrets themselves, so they will swivel with the weaponry to essentially always be facing the opponent. Um, the entry also has, yeah, those three that are on the turrets are 12.4-meter by 15.6-meter strength 10 shields. And it's got 48, I think. I mean, it's a little bit hard to count the repair bots on the ship. And,
Later on, I can confirm that if you want with the tools.
oh, yeah, if you would like to, sure. Um, it's got one 456 millimeter single barrel inverted super cav timed laser guided AP flak close in weapon system APS turret. So basically, on the bottom of the ship, near the back, it has this weapon, which is designed to destroy incoming torpedoes, and I think that's
Interesting. I
interesting.
didn't notice that on the first design. Is it new?
It is new. It is indeed. This was
That's
it,
actually really interesting the way that they did that. That looks like it's a deck gun except on the bottom.
it is, and it. I mean, it's essentially a naked weapon, but the way that it's positioned under the ship and near the rear, where you could reasonably expect torpedoes to turn and start following the ship and trying to target the propulsion in the back, it can shoot those down. And so I think the placement on it is rather wonderful for what it's designed to do.
I found the ribbing on the ship overall to be relatively interesting, like the ribbing on the propellers and the ribbing on the inside of that hangar deck thing. I think
Oh, agreed. I love how
I'm
the
a bit surprised to see that because typically what you see with these realistic designs is maybe like just sticks sticking out with maybe a few supports mimicked on.
yeah, and these to me they look almost like the chokes on weapon barrels.
And it also looks like they're using those to hide the reduction gears. I think
Let's see here if I can. Yep, that they are.
a unique way to hide them.
I agree. I actually really do like that. And there is a space here where this particular custom rudder can switch back and forth where the ribbing has been removed. So it's got that extra little bit of non-clipping
Well, it can't clip anyways. It's not a
range to
stacked
work with.
cell object, so there's no way for it to clip through anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's got that little bit of extra space. I should phrase it as
Within this
to to help the turning, and I rather like that little interesting, uh, noteworthy feature to me. Um, it does have a fair amount of mimic work, not as much as some entries on the list, but the
there are two, I think, which have more.
yeah, by
One is
by
one
quite
is
a
one is going to be covered under my video.
yes, yes. Um,
You know which one I'm referring to, right? You know, the big one.
yeah, and yours.
That's gonna come on like here, right?
Yeah, that'll be covered in this video. So yeah, the amount of weaponry, the variety is fair, but it's mostly in um, the like the turretry itself. The
The turrets seem a bit sparse, in my opinion. Like they, I mean, like I'm one to talk because mine are literally just alloy brick. It look like alloy bricks with rangefinder slapped on top. But yeah, I'm just a bit surprised to see, I suppose, heavy armor a on a turret on this
mm,
type of an aesthetic. I thought that's interesting to do it that way and
I
hit all my area under mimics.
I think that the shielding placed on is sort of it helps in that regard. Allows the shield to be a little bit closer and maybe not use as much power. I mean, that's a possible explanation.
I mean,
But
I would just put mimics on top,
mm,
but that's just me. It could be their aesthetic.
yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Like just a little bit of futurism on this World War II design.
right. And it has these three main turrets, and then it has these side turrets. So it's got two. Let's see. Okay, so two front and back, and then here, and then the simple weapons. The LA, or excuse me, LE casemate simple cannons. Right, so four 333 millimeter twin barrel secondary frag slash heat APS turrets, and four 348 millimeter twin barrel secondary frag slash heat APS turrets. And then it's got the three 456 millimeter twin barrel main HPHE APS turrets.
Interesting. 4.56s, so the same caliber as Yamato, even though this is supposed to be the bigger sister.
Nice. Okay, so I'm glad that you caught the historic reference there.
It should be well, four. Actually, no, aren't Yamatos just full of 460s? Because
I
either way, 456 is roughly 18 inches.
I'm not the best person to ask as far as
Yeah.
historic ships go,
Well,
but
it's if it's supposed to be A150, it's supposed to be roughly 5'10". It's supposed to be 5'10", but of course, 4.56 would be more realistic in terms of just
yeah, and
compared to real
you
life.
can't get a 510 unfortunately in From the Depths. I mean, the max that an APS
Biggest
goes
you
up
get
to
is
is
500.
500, right? So, I mean, you work with what you've got. And again, I think that the thump damage is a pretty good call, but unfortunately for this one, it's only a 7.6 thump AP, which
So
won't.
does it have any solid in it, or is it just raw HE and then a HP head?
Yeah, it. Let me actually do a double check. Need to unpause. Okay, so we for uh, the main weapon shell, just have the
So that's
hollow
actual
point head. It
HPHE,
does
not
have some
in.
solid.
So yeah, it's actual HPHE
Yeah.
because sometimes you see people using HP as inertial warheads,
Well,
even though nowadays,
it does have an inertial fuse.
just in case of a shield bounce, I guess. But
Mm.
now, but yeah, some designs still use HP heads as their source of inertial fusing for their payload shells, which doesn't really make sense anymore, but it still works, I guess. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. They just don't know that not, that just using a raw HE head would do the same thing.
Right. It feels a little almost sad that only having 7.6 thump armor pierce has the equivalent of a 2 meter KD with that amount of thump damage. I mean, compared to like
I mean,
the shells
explosive disc
on the Poyer
is
T.
expected to do most of the damage anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah. It also does come equipped with two 8 meter medium magnetic frag torpedoes, which
magnets. Haven't seen those much.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
a bit surprising, but I don't see magnets much, which kind of does make sense because, like, these are big boys. Like, it shouldn't be too difficult to hit them.
right. I also like the idea of the magnet torpedoes pulling the front of the torpedo for that frag angle to potentially get a little bit of an upwards angle
Not
into the
really.
ship.
It's going to, not really. It's the magnet applies to the center of mass of the torpedo. It does not apply to the tip. There's no torque involved.
Uh,
In fact, it would actually make the angle worse, but it would make the hit rate a bit better.
I've I've tended to find that the magnet works where the magnet is actually placed in the missile. At
Really?
least that was the way it worked in my testing for
Hmm.
the tiny tank
When I
tournament.
was messing around with story mode, I used a raw missile bomber, and like I put my magnets way at the back, but the part that was attracted was just the middle.
That is a little strange. Okay. I mean, it could be the case for my testing for tiny tank tournament. I was working for a little while with magnetized heat, and it was pulling one side in, but I found that it was pulling more, or I had the chance of pulling the wrong side. So the uh, the heat would not be um, not be blasting into the tank, but it would still instead be going away. But then again, the way I currently had it set up was a magnet at each end, and that does sort of tend to bring them in sideways sometimes. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll of course be able to find out how the magnets work when the fights begin.
Yeah, and of course, just more time warnings, I guess, because again, we have
Mm,
to make sure that we don't take too
right.
long on each ship. We should. I think it's best if we just mainly cover the general downsides and stuff and not go into too much detail. I mean, this is our first try. We didn't really rehearse this that much, so we don't really.
Yeah, I was expecting about 40-minute video when
Yeah, we're
started,
we're
but
past that
we're
point. It's
we're
already
getting there.
30.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
it's we're 35 minutes in.
right, moving on then. Okay, the Armored Stingray by Zekin.
Just curious, how are you deciding the order for showing these off?
Well, The Poyer T was the first one I received, and after that, I'm just going down in order through the list.
I mean,
Oh,
didn't you
wait,
just go
what
to the
the?
middle of it? Yeah, press just F11. We
Yeah.
don't. I don't think.
Okay, so this one, slight submarine mode, and these weapons are a little bit terrifying. They are super cav, pen depth, APHE, hull mounted railguns, and
It's
oh
going
my
full
goodness.
simulator style, I guess.
Yeah, so these weapons, they have 26.1 and 25.7 RPM. Um, he ran out of budget for like one piece of one of the weapons. So there's the middle one is just ever so slightly different on specs, but yeah, they've got 0.25 inaccuracy, so they're not the most accurate weapons, but still generally better than most cram. Um, Speed on them, 1,305 meters per second shell speed, which is zipping by, and they draw 120,000 energy per shot. None of that
That's
goes
almost max.
towards accuracy.
This is 8 meter. These are 8 meters, right?
I do believe I didn't annotate that,
Oh
but
yeah, I forgot. I don't think I do the same thing that. But assuming those
yeah,
are that's 40K off of just raw maximum that is practical. Like
yeah,
the
these
most.
things. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, I'm done. Like it's the like 160K is like probably the around the highest that I've seen. Just a bit more than 160 to 180. 180 is like when you're just going just purely for raw pen and barely have any HE in there at all. Because remember, max rail draw is also dependent on the amount of solid bodies, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I
the
think solid bodies
the
increase more than HE bodies, but I don't remember. But I might be wrong.
the penetration factor on these is downright scary. They've got 64,281 kinetic damage at 61.1 armor piercing, and that's a 14 meter kill depth. So these things can penetrate through 14 metal beams.
Or roughly 3.5 heavy armor.
Yeah, I mean, and then they've also, on top of that, got 7,310 high explosive damage at an 11.8 meter radius. So they get
These are
in
some big
deep
boy guns.
and, yeah, and mess shit up. So, I mean, I I love the idea of this. Just like
It's pretty as well. In my
it,
opinion, I think it looks pretty interesting. It's unique and it has that twin tower superstructure that I'm starting to see quite a lot in like Scarlet Dawn people and like just people in general.
yeah,
Really
that
seems to be making that quite popular.
I myself also love the somewhat organic aesthetic of like being a
I mean,
helmeted manta ray.
you're the one who built Cryptosuchus.
Yeah, yeah, and a few other entries of similar nature. Um, but yeah, the total firepower on this one is 460.15, and most of that is the APS. It's only got 3.07 in missile, and you know, basically it's got decoys. It's got decoy torpedoes and decoy missiles, and it also does have shields hidden up underneath that helmet there. But this thing, I love how it uses the water as a defense to sort of skip off non
Too bad a lot of people have Super Cav, but then
yeah
again,
non
it's still
those that
sticks
don't
to them.
though. I I mean yeah, it's
I'm
an
glad I last
effective.
minute decided to add Super Cav to my guns.
Yeah, I am sure that there will be some people that are glad that they have, especially anybody that this particular entry. But those three main weapons are scary, and I mean, it, it it might not have the most firepower, but in weapons, they're really up there in terms of what I personally would fear of weapons brought in this tournament. So, I mean, yeah, we'll see how this one does. I'll try and move along, keep the pace up a little bit more. So, next up, the BB-11 Barbarian by
Trying to
Mr.
get a closer
Info.
look at who I'm up against, I see.
Yes. So, once it loads in. Okay. So this one, it's kind of I
You want to
almost
double tap E instead because otherwise you're gonna get that weird movement of your camera just out into the middle of nowhere. That's because you're tabbed. Because
yeah.
you're
Okay.
like you're linked to your avatar. So when you pause and load something, and you're gonna get kicked around.
Okay.
And when you double tap E, you're just a floating head. You're not in
Okay.
third
Thank
person
you.
mode into
I'll
your avatar.
I'll do that. So I kind of hate to use the term bog standard, but it is almost a bog standard sort of battleship. I mean,
Looks very FTV.
right, right. It definitely has the tourney ship sort of aesthetic. As far as total firepower, it's more or less middle of the line, 507.16, and that's 126.31 in missiles, 111.78 in APS, and 269.07 in cram. The defenses: 65 repair bots, two 12-meter large flare/radar decoy missiles.
Those sound really big.
Yes, they're they're definitely going to be more than likely decoying a few incomers. It's got two 12-meter large sonar decoy torpedoes, so basically the same thing underwater. And it's got four 2-meter small interceptor missiles. It also has two hybrid Sea-Wiz slash AA 80-meter 5-barrel flak slash HE turrets. So
Interesting. Bringing combat AA into a fight instead of just CVs.
yeah,
Sounds
so
like this ship might actually be used for campaign as well.
it's possible. I like the dual purpose. So like if they're fighting, for example, a ship that doesn't use uh, incoming missiles, they can instead just like fire those weapons
I mean,
to
it
get some
might
damage
be
in.
diddly squat to like a large battleship, but at least it'll be something.
Yeah, I just like the idea of doing a little bit of dual purpose. I mean, it might not do all that much in the large scheme of things, but it somehow feels better than just having a pure Sea-Wiz. Like to be able uh, to target the enemy itself if need be. As far as armament, it's got four 2,000 millimeter 4-barrel laser targeted fused APHE cram turrets that have a 13.2-second reload. And they've got a zero point 0.3 inaccuracy. They
It's
do
pretty decent for cram.
they do 12,073 and 12,030 kinetic at 41.4 or 40 AP, which is a 3
That's a
meter
lot of AP for a cram.
kill depth. Yeah, it, I mean, yeah, yeah. And then 11,637 and 11,723 high explosive at a 16.6 meter radius, and they are fused to basically pen depth. So I mean, yeah, I kind of like I like a good cram. I like a good beefy cram. So I mean,
Beefy crams are definitely fun, but I've
yeah.
honestly never really touched crams that much in my entire career. Like the most I've ever used
Hmm.
them was the mortar entry on my first tournament, which is,
I've gotten
the pancakes.
more into them ever since the viability of the Doom crams. I just something about that really appeals to me, like blowing a ship in half.
And you'll see at some
With
point.
like one shot. I love it.
I mean, tomorrow we'll see some Doom crams. And I'm not sure about today, but tomorrow there's definitely one ship that has something that I would consider a Doom cram.
Oh man, I can't wait to see that. Um, yeah, it's also got six 300 millimeter Hesh APS turrets, which have a 30.8 rounds per minute. They've got a .22 inaccuracy and 488 meters per second shell speed. And these are doing 14,707 spalling with 1,021 thump for the Hesh. They have four 12-meter large HE frag missiles and four 12-meter large HE frag torpedoes. So I kind of I'm getting very much the sense that frag missiles and torpedoes are the meta for this tournament.
Frag in general is the meta. Like for
Yeah,
2.7, frag is meta
yeah,
at
yeah.
this
For
point.
the cram as well, and there are some entries that make extensive use of the AP cram or AP frag cram. So, I mean,
Including the one I consider a Doom cram, if I remember correctly. That was either API or Frap, but I'm pretty sure it was Frap.
yeah, yeah. We'll be seeing some entries that bring the meta. We shall say. Uh, yeah. However, this one, yeah, it's very middle of the line overall. So, only special thing about it, it is walkable, and I have a certain respect for entries and ships that are walkable. So
Uh,
it could indeed be a campaign ship.
in the future, mine is, and in the future of my design, as it gets completely reformed into its intended build, because again, like BS was never really intended to exist until I decided to join the tournament. So, yeah. And speaking of which, let's
Yeah.
give a quick
Speaking
click on
of,
BS.
speaking of,
Yeah, BS is a conventional version for my planned design Broken Kindred Spirit for my faction. So basically, the story behind this is like I wanted to try realism for once, so I was just like, I'm
oh
gonna make a silly excuse for that, and I decided, why not why not build? I mean, I have a very sci-fi faction, so having a realistic ship in there doesn't really make sense. So I just made up this BS reason for putting it in based on just it being a museum ship passed down through generations and stuff like that.
yeah,
And then
Chimera went overboard on the mimic work. I mean, it,
and it's not nowhere near complete. It's nowhere near
yeah,
complete.
even incomplete. What was it? It was 4,100 and what?
4,092, I think.
How much? How much?
4,092, I think.
4,092.
No,
4,000.
the number is on the thing. I added that myself. I updated the I updated the annotations when I saw that a few things
Oh,
were.
oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, the amount of time and effort. How long did you spend working on
Um,
just the mimics?
Mimics probably took up like, okay, if you include the entire KS project, they probably took up like 30% of the entire time.
Okay, but how
For
long did
Broken
the
Spirit,
yeah.
for Broken Spirit itself, probably around like 60%.
Okay, so how long was the entire amount of time then? Just to give the
KS have been
viewers.
working on and off for roughly since. June, like late June, mid late June is when I first started the project. Back then it
Yeah.
was back then it was supposed to be a replica of the USS California. Then it eventually shifted to being British, which is what it is now.
So you can figure probably somewhere over 2 months, less than 3 months worth of time just working on mimics. And that blows my mind. I mean, it's
It's so
a
lacking in
work of
detail.
art, though.
I don't have like the spotlights. I don't have the secondaries. I just have some pretty parts of the superstructure. Like
Right,
I
running out of
just
time.
yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, okay, so you do have to admit this is pretty superstructure. Even
It's
if the ship
frustrating some of the
itself,
things I have.
even if the ship itself is unfinished. So
I was planning to completely redo that deck edge so it looks like a complete wood deck rather than just, having that thick border in. I was going to redo that, but didn't end up
yeah,
having. It would
if
have
there
looked
was
better
one
that way.
thing on the ship, it did feel like the deck
Is
was the
empty.
plainest.
It doesn't have anything right now.
Yeah. Can you tell us what these symbols here on the side mean?
Um, well, yeah. Again, it's custom campaign, right? So
Okay.
that's spirit. An expanded version of the words kindred spirit written out on the writing system for I made it because I'm a nerd, right? So I decided
Yeah.
to why not make a conlay,
Hey,
construct a link.
I've
It's
done that myself, so
you've done a
I
conlay before?
yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. As
I
for writing
completely
system, it's
understand.
yeah, it's not logographic like Chinese. It's alphabetic in a way,
Okay.
in a sense. I guess I don't think we really need to go through that much detail of it.
Yeah. So basically, for this ship, zero active defenses. However, the
Yep.
superstructure is supposed to serve as aim point spoofing because
That's an unintentional side effect, but it just has so many mimics in it, so
yeah,
why not call it a
yeah.
feature?
But Chimera went with the idea of the best defense is a strong offense. So
That
this
was
one,
not intentional either. The hull just turned out very overpriced due to the sheer amount of mimics.
yeah.
So
But
I couldn't afford to put anything on there. Like
the
the armor cost is that high, but it's very thin. It's just big, too big. So I wasn't able to afford anything in terms of defenses.
yeah, but your firepower is certainly up there with the big boys. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of entries that
I
have
think
more
I have the third
firepower.
highest, like
Uh,
third to Layok and
yeah, I know
a
Leox is
nickel.
higher.
A nickel
What?
has 900 something, if I remember correctly.
Oh, whoo, okay. Yeah, I think yeah, you're either third or fourth. But that's definitely on the top end. But yeah, your weaponry, three 500 millimeter single barrel frag railgun turrets, which are mimicked to look like three barrel turrets. Um,
I just like single barrel, but better
yeah,
come at me. Single barrel, come at me. I will always go single barrel, even no matter what. Especially now that part limits are gone, I'm just gonna go single barrel all the way.
yeah. They have a I actually super do respect the RPM on these. 148.6 rounds per minute. That's 198.23 firepower and 80.06 shell power. 0.19 inaccuracy. So they are fairly accurate. Not the most accurate, but they should be hitting more often than missing. They've got 407 meter per second shell speed, which is fine
They're
for
absolutely slow. They are
yeah.
too slow by
It's
my
fine
standards.
for ships that are capped at this speed. The max allowed being 30 meters per second. So hey, I mean it's definitely faster than a cram shell, but
Definitely. Also,
but
what's your opinion on the bow? Because that's one thing you haven't seemed to have touched on.
um okay, so like the way you redid the anchors, I like. a lot more than they were before.
before. They were sticking
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Like the anchors are still very quite undetailed, but I was on a time crunch at that point. Like I
yeah,
meant like
and
just the shaping of the bow. What's your opinion on that? Because
the
that I've spent
the chains
some
feel
time.
good. The shape itself, I like the like angle. Um, it, it might just be my computer, but again, the rendering on the smoothness, it's not the smoothest. I mean,
I mean, it's still staggered, of course.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so, I mean, I realize that you put a lot of work into the mimics up
I
here,
mean,
and
this is
it,
more copy paste than anything. The mimics on the bow are just copy paste than anything. Like the ones that actually took more effort are on the superstructure, but I probably spent like roughly half the time on the roughly half the time I spent on the superstructure on the bow mimics because just
yeah,
how time consuming those can get. Just
yeah.
copy paste,
The
copy paste.
feel of how it sort of like bevels out. I mean, it's really hard to get that with just your bog standard from the depths, you know, armor pieces. So, like it, the only the only thing is it seems to be a little bit hidden, at least on my system, by the color. It just sort of it doesn't show up
It
great.
doesn't show up as bright as
Yeah,
it
it
should.
doesn't show up as bright. Um,
I
and
mean, like I have
yeah,
on my system. I think it's just the way I have my graphics set up. You just
yeah,
have everything. You just have your light intensity turned down. I have mine set relatively high. I have mine
yeah,
set relatively high. I have it set up the way that Owners Futile has it set up because I was having issues with shaders and stuff when I was doing my entry for that. So I just based everything off of that system, which isn't default. So I guess that's a bit on me. But
yeah.
I wonder what it looks like. I wonder if it still looks decent that way. I'm not sure.
Um, and also you have included one 500 millimeter single barrel super cav frag railgun turret so that you can do damage to things that are underwater. And that actually has an even higher rounds per minute at 168.8.
Because shell rears are only 100 millimeters long, so the shorter shell means faster
Yeah,
reload.
yeah. It's slightly more accurate, and the shell speed is slightly faster. But it's doing a little bit less damage. It's
I
only got
would say that 12.5% is quite a significant increase in speed.
well, yeah, the shell speed 455 meters per second shell speed compared to 407. So yeah, it depends on whether you're looking at like okay, is about 50 meters per second a big difference, or is it based on like of 400 a 50 meter per second increase? Because that's significant. But like you look at
In the
a
grand scheme of things, it's 50 meters per second ain't that much.
yeah. And yeah, so these weapons, I've seen what they can do. They can definitely tear things up. Um, I do feel I gotta say I feel like the lack of active defenses is going to be the
And
Achilles heel of
the
your
Achilles
entry.
heel of this design is just, I know, I'm more than aware of that. It's
Yeah,
got paper armor, it's got no active defenses, and its guns are absolutely massive, which works in its which is actually a detriment in this case because of the design, the turrets are forced pretty close together. So even through 5 to 6 meters of heavy armor separating them, they still chain detonate.
I do, however, believe that against certain entries, you'll be able to deal enough damage fast enough that you could pull out the matches.
Yeah,
No, I
my
don't.
hope is just log EPS.
Yeah, just for sheer firepower, I don't think that's the case for all of them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, as you know, I'm not
yeah,
the top dog on firepower. I just
Yeah.
said aesthetics, I guess. Not necessarily aesthetics, because not everyone likes Mimic Slope Stagger. Some people prefer transitions over Mimic Slope Stagger, and in general, it's relatively undetailed compared to the others, even if like the trusses are very detailed, everything
Yeah, the
else isn't.
trusses, I mean, oh my goodness. They are, I think, the most detailed trusses I've seen. Granted, I haven't taken like super detailed look into the Steam Workshop, and I'm sure that there are some
There are
that
definitely
probably
more.
rival it there. But as far
I
as
mean,
tournament entries,
this is about
yeah,
as this is about as real life as you can get for that. So I'm guessing that like you'll find similar. Oh, you're more likely to find similar things.
yeah,
Mari will definitely have more detailed stuff than me, unlike every other actual realistic builder. I'm just a guy who decided to do it like once.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there may be a day where I get the bug and decide, hey, I'm gonna see what I can do, but I'm thankful I haven't caught that yet, or the insanity that's sure to come with it.
Uh, the time lost.
Yeah.
Anyways, Leok,
Yeah,
the
okay, so Leok,
self-proclaimed one of the coolest designs.
I mean, the firepower on it is
It's very good.
up there, yeah. So, okay, so special things regarding this design. It's drivable. Um, I actually,
I'm pretty sure mine had a steering wheel steering wheel inside the cockpit as well.
I just might not have caught that. I'm sorry. Um,
That's fine,
yeah,
and it's semi-walkable. Like all the doors for walkability are there. It's just not connected.
yeah, yeah. This one here also has a semi-walkable interior. So far with Leok's design, that I mean, you can walk around in a given layer, but you can't get from one to the next. There don't seem to be ladders. Um, but yeah, I actually really like the way he's got the detection set up. The detection is on turrets, so it's basically designed to face the opponent and keep track of them. Um, and yeah, it's got a custom
He
theme
went for the
song.
He went for the Stingray slash Snoke Supremacy design. If I remember correctly, that was one of his inspirations. Something
Yeah,
like that.
I know that Star Wars was an inspiration. I'm not sure of the
Yeah,
exact
those
ship
cannons
name.
look kind of like turbo lasers, I guess. I'm not never really paid too much attention to Star Wars, but yeah, I call myself a nerd even though I don't do that. So I guess that's a bit that's a bit of a flaw, I guess. I've seen all the Star Wars movies, I just never paid attention to like
I,
lore and stuff.
I mean, it's a lifestyle. I mean, yeah, you get to be my age, spend enough time. I mean, and there's still stuff I haven't seen or read or played, or and it's never ending. You fall down the rabbit hole, and you're falling for the rest of your life. Um, but yeah, this thing, it's got a custom theme song, and I think
Fully custom written, or is it or is it ripped off of like SoundCloud or YouTube or something and slapped on? I'm guessing it's custom.
it is a song from I think a game.
Interesting.
I know he told me the reference, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. But I know it does
I'm sure
come from
someone
somewhere.
told me as well.
Yeah,
Let me check that.
yeah.
You the host anyway for this episode.
But yeah, the firepower on this is definitely up there. It's one of the top as far as the sheer amount of firepower brought to the table, and it's 853.54. 1.59 of that is in missiles, and the rest is in APS. So it does have repair bots. It's not lacking in that department. It's got 46 repair bots, 4 quad, 3
Just for fun.
meter medium interceptor torpedo turrets on the bottom. So just to show those off, which are, to me, these style of torpedo turrets feel more historic than sci-fi. And
And it has boulders, which is interesting. An interesting design choice on something that would looks like. I don't see how that would reduce wave drag at all, but whatever. It looks cool, so we'll
yeah,
deal with it.
yeah, and I think according to some of the back and forth in the chat, this thing is meant to sort of go backwards and keep the enemy at a distance. And yeah,
And yeah, I just confirmed like it's definitely based on supremacy because uh, one of the comments he wrote was literally, "What if Snoke was into boats?"
yeah. So this thing is a Hesh monster. It's got 8 500 millimeter single barrel Hesh APS, and they shoot 104 rounds per minute, 104.5 firepower, 60 shell power. They've got .24 inaccuracy, so the inaccuracy is it's better than cram, but not as good as a lot of longer barrel APS.
Without
Uh,
the lighting, I'm pretty sure you actually might have you might actually not be on default, but
mm,
yeah, sorry,
the
I shouldn't have interrupted. But
uh,
I'll show you what I have my lighting set up to later, so
oh,
we'll
oh,
see what the deal is with that.
okay. Uh, yeah, the shell speed is fairly slow. It's only 345 meters per second shell speed, so it's still faster than a cram shell, but not by much. I mean, yeah. However, the damage that they deal is pretty up there. As far as Hesh, 27,664 Hesh spalling damage. And that's 1,920 Hesh thump at 20 AP, which, it's not enough for, to destroy a metal block, but the
You
spalling,
definitely have your lighting set lower than most people. I just scrolled through show off your ships and just saw every other screenshot of A150 I saw was a lot brighter.
yeah, a lot of the his shots. Oh, he had painted it sort of a bluish color before, and he changed the name and gave it the red paint job in a more recent update. But this thing, I mean, yeah, it's definitely got that overwhelming firepower sort of philosophy. It's a Marine Corps battalion of its own. So yeah,
I would say it's a bit more than that.
yeah, yeah. It's a Space Marine battalion. Well, more of a Star Wars thing, but even so. So yeah,
It it's the supremacy itself compressed into a smaller space and then rooted onto meter.
yeah. I, I like this thing. I like the theme song it's got going for it. And I definitely think it's got a shot. Granted, I don't know if it's gonna win or not. But like if anybody has had the like you know 800 IQ kind of foresight of spall lining their ship, then they're gonna be good against this because it's only got
I
Hesh.
have so many air gaps in mind.
Yeah, and I mean that's like its strength and its weakness. It's put all of its eggs into one basket. So it's either gonna absolutely demolish the opposition
He's
that it's
lucky that the
going
hash bug
against,
got
or
fixed.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He's lucky the hash bug got fixed before the tournament started.
Yes, yes, I fully agree.
Otherwise, this would be a lot more underwhelming.
Yeah, I think he might have actually changed the turrets post fix also. So Uh,
Yeah,
not too much else to say on this one, so move on to the
and then just in between, I'm
next.
just going to explain what I'm just further explain what I meant with the awkward shove in of kindred spirit. It also
Sure.
like the intended design is a lot has unconventional weaponry, which is what makes it fit in with my faction, I guess. It's like the only thing it has going for it, other than the only thing it has going for it that makes it look like something of mine, I guess. But clearly, Broken Spirit doesn't have any of that, which is why it's called Broken Spirit.
Yeah. Broken Spirit, somewhat the stripped down version for Chimera's
Well, it's the first
Kindred
iteration, I
Spirit.
guess, because I didn't even
Aye.
finish because Kindred Spirit was just a hole when I started.
Aye. Um,
It's a hole and some gun.
so this entry here, we've got Chonky Boy by a nickel, and it
Feels like
doesn't
it scared
have.
me when I first saw it.
Yeah, I. It
Feels
reminds
like
me
my
of the
like.
Colossus.
It, I mean, yeah. In terms of like weaponry, it's very similar to mine, but taken to the extreme in terms of just frag, frag, frag.
Yeah, it's the most meta of meta. I mean, it's AP frag all the way.
Aren't the
And
mains pure frag, or am I mistaken?
pardon?
Aren't the mains pure frag, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, they're AP frag.
Oh,
So
okay,
they
so
do
I
they
am
do
wrong.
right. They do have kinetic. They've got quite a fair amount of kinetic, but the pen depth ends up being either 2 meters or 3 meters, depending on which of the turrets. The mortars are 2 meters. The turrets are three.
It's
Um,
also supposed to be a repair monster based on just the sheer amount of wood,
yeah, this
and
one
that's also how it afforded all the firepower too, most likely, just
this one
being made out
has
of wood.
128 repair bots, which is pretty much up there again.
I think I personally have a few with more in my group
Okay, okay,
because I'm a bit more lenient in that regard because I
yeah.
don't see as much of a problem with it, but I didn't
I
know about that whole thing.
the, there's only really one entry that had too much for my taste.
2,600 repair
Yeah,
bots.
that one needed to get toned down, but and
We're
was
working on
mostly
that.
that was mostly because there's a bug where ships can collect resources from destroyed turrets. There's no way to deal with that, and it just feels rather exploity. So, but yeah, this one very up there, also on total firepower at 900.18, which is you know even more than Leox. So depending on whether you have one that's up there too, that might place yours at fourth or not.
This is
Kim.
first, as far as I know. This
Okay,
is. Yeah.
okay. Um, yeah, and this one it's not got anything in particularly special on defenses. No real active defenses other than the repairs, but the firepower. It's just another. The best defense is a strong offense,
I mean,
and
it
it's
still has a decent chunk of armor on it.
oh
It's
yeah,
just a bit more vulnerable to frag.
and the frag itself. One of the things that I really noted on some of the frag here is you see that last one, the two triple fire,
The tripping fire.
257 timed frag. So these have a negative 90-degree frag angle, and I had like this epiphany kind of moment where I realized, dude, these are supposed to pop turrets because the frag aims down, goes towards either like the local weapon controller,
Yeah,
the
that will. Yes, that is.
yeah
I agree with you, but that is. I'm guessing that it's more or less intended for like the last few shells because it's going to take because these shells are a lot smaller than the other frag shells we've seen. These are
yeah
likely going to have to burrow in quite a bit, which is a bit more challenging when you're digging holes down instead of through. But
yeah
then again, that's probably the job of having more than one turret of different frag types.
Yeah, yeah,
based on what
I
I've heard
agree.
from.
They do seem to each have a somewhat specialized yet still meta function. Like the first one has 180-degree frag, but it's, I mean, these are the mortars, so they're basically trying to punch down through what is hoped to be thin deck armor and just explode on and Swiss cheese everything inside.
I'm
Whereas you've
glad
also,
my deck armor is thicker than my side belt armor
yeah,
because I wasn't planning.
yeah, that, hey, no, that's a meta call. Like I think
There are definitely a lot of mortars.
it's definitely viable to like make your deck or the bottom of your hull thicker than normal for this type of tournament, expecting, the big heavies to be out. And yeah, we'll see whether the overwhelming firepower on this entry can overcome the various more defensive
This is one of
entries.
the designs that I have my hopes on.
Yeah, I
I love this
definitely
design.
I like the simplicity of it too. Just firepower, firepower, firepower.
Daka daka daka.
Yeah, daka daka daka, frag, frag out.
Frag
So,
'em down.
and I also do I have to admit I like the color scheme, black and orange. It's kind of, yeah, I love it. So next, I think this is the. Let's check. I'm just going to make sure this is the
I think
last one.
uh
Yep,
yeah,
yep. This is
that's
the
the last
last
one.
one for the first video here, and then we'll be moving on with the next video where Chimera will be in control of the camera, and I'll be commenting on.
I think I'm going to be loading every single design out onto onto tractor beams. That way, I think that's what I'm probably going to do.
Okay, yeah, that works. That's just fine. It actually seems more efficient than than me trying to bungle around.
Yeah, but RAM usage.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Thank
Um.
goodness I have plenty of memory on my desktop.
So, for those of you who are old school, you may recognize this ship from the old Gradius arcade game. This was one of,
It definitely looked familiar to me, but I didn't know exactly where from. It just looked like something I've seen before.
yeah, there was an old, I don't remember whether Gradius was side scrolling or top down. I think it might have been top down. Where you had a plane and you were flying through, and you got these upgrades for your weaponry and shields and stuff, and like enemy ships would come in from the sides and from the front, and some would like pause on the screen. You'd have an amount of time to destroy them before they'd sneak off the screen and
Feels like a
get high
classic
scores and
arcade
stuff.
type. It feels like a classic arcade type shoot 'em up.
It was. It was in the classic arcade era of the 80s. So, I mean, that kind of dates me, but yeah, I was born in 82. But yeah, so this ship is a replica ship based on that by K Patrol. And it's.
Like so pulling that much detail of what it was most likely an 8-bit model is pretty impressive. Like
Uh, well, being that it was on arcade machines, it had a little bit more detail than 8-bit. It might have been 16. Still, I mean, not a lot, but yeah, yeah. This one, as far as special things, it's got very well protected propellers, which are buried with, like, I don't remember the exact number, but something like 8 meters of grating or something like that. It's got buttery smooth movement. It's drivable, and as I mentioned, it's a replica ship from the Gradius arcade game. It's boss battle time. I mean, it was boss in the arcade game, and it kind of has the feel to me, looking at the inside, that it's fairly likely to flood, but not that likely to sink. The firepower on this one, 430.95, so pretty mid-level. 76.64 in missiles, 183 in APS, and 171.23 in cram. Defenses, it's only got 11 repair bots, so a little bit scarce in that regard, but it's got 2 sonar decoys at the back, one sonar decoy, or excuse me, one radar decoy in the back also. Decoy here and back here on each side. And I think as far as the entries that I reviewed, it's the only one that's actually using decoys rather than you know, distractor type missiles or torpedoes. The shielding on it, it's got plus 2.5 AC up down shield ring and a plus 3.4 AC front and back shield ring. So that will, as far as I know, stack for certain slope types that are like both up and down and front back. As far as weaponry goes, if I can get this to a navigable point, there we go. It's got 8 9-meter large laser-guided frag missiles, which are doing 29 times 19,732 damage, 80-degree frag, at 277 meters per second. So these, as far as missiles go, are pretty fast. I have a suspicion they may be able to get through some LAM systems or CWIZs. Maybe not all of them. They've got a 30-second reload. It's got one 8 gantry, 6-meter medium laser-guided frag torpedo turret. 2 500mm single-barrel HP frag APS turrets, so another frag entry here, and 2 500mm quad-barrel HP frag APS turrets, and then 3 2000mm quad-barrel fused AP frag cram with a 13.3-second reload, 2050 pack, 0.28 inaccuracy, and this thing is doing 14,678 kinetic at 42.1 armor piercing, which is a 4-meter kill depth, and 17,374 damage, 180-degree frag. So it's time from impact, inertial, and low altitude as the fuses. Thoughts on this entry?
I liked it when as soon as I saw it, like from the beginning, it was one of the first entries I saw like that was being showed off, and I just noticed that cockpit there. That's a nice touch.
The what is a nice touch?
Like cockpit, like in the middle.
Oh
just right
yes,
on
yeah, like yeah, I
you
mentioned.
can see that into it.
Yeah, it mentioned this is actually drivable. So
Not that you would see much out from there, at least.
right, yeah, it's got like this narrow view. I can't even hardly navigate my way there.
Do you have your camera set to like 4x or
Let's
something?
see. There we go.
I mean, you could see
So
somewhat there, but
yeah,
it,
you can see
it feels
basically
like
directly
looking.
in front.
It feels like looking through like say like it feels like looking through a U-shaped apartment building more than say a cockpit of a ship.
Yeah,
You see what I mean, right?
it
It feels
yeah,
more like you have two buildings on your side and you're looking out to like a skyline rather than just an actual cockpit. But it's still really cool.
it also
Probably in
reminds
the most
me of
logical position.
like the Death Star scene from Star Wars down in the trenches of the Death Star, where Luke
It's
fires off
definitely
the missile
trinchy.
and destroys it. Yeah, it's kind of it just man, I wouldn't want to actually drive this thing in a campaign, but I mean it technically it's possible. But yeah, this little cockpit. Let me get out of there. So yeah, granted, it has this big, huge space here in the front, and you think that might be a detriment, but it's actually like really pretty well armored and protected back here, in the portion where it connects. So, I granted some of the entries have a lot of firepower, so
And
I
these turrets are
wonder,
so big that they make 2,000 millimeter crabs look small.
yeah, I wonder whether or not this will be a detriment to the ship or not. Um, I'm inclined to say maybe not. Just it has like heavy armor under there, like multiple layers, and I don't know,
It's
but
big and it's big and it's pretty.
yeah.
I like it.
I also just interesting little point of interest is there's a chance for some shells, like cram shots and such, to actually miss here in the middle. You know, if they
Yeah,
like fired and
1%.
yeah,
That's a very small chance, but it's
small
still there.
chance, but it exists, right? I wouldn't,
It's
I wouldn't,
nature.
yeah, yeah. It's a little humorous point. Like I would love to see that happen once, right? But
We can
yeah,
hope.
right. Final thoughts as far as the ships that have been shown off today. Favorites or special points of interests for you?
For me personally, I think
Yeah,
I've already pretty much pointed out that one of my favorite designs is the Chunky Boy by Nickel, and also on the others, let me just pull up the list again so I know, so I remember all the names and such, so I can picture everything again.
sure. I definitely think that Chonky Boy is,
I
in
also,
its own right, a strong contender. I kind of have a soft spot of those shown for the Armored Stingray.
yeah, I have a soft
With
spot for the Armored Stingray
yeah,
and the Heavy Assault Ship as well.
yeah.
But
Layok's design is no slouch as well.
yeah,
Um, I definitely think that the Poyer T is the most defensive ship of those shown, and I will be curious to see if that works out for it. Whether just being able to fend off pretty much whatever spread your opponent can throw at you uh, will work in the long run, or if these entries are just going to be able to overwhelm um, most any defense that can be put up. And I definitely think that there's some overwhelming to be done with the sheer scope of the firepower being brought to the table.
we have definitely have a lot of variety of different, ideologies and stuff.
Yeah,
So it's
I
kind of
actually I'm pleased with the amount of variety that's been shown in the designs, both aesthetically and in practical content. So, um, the next video that we will be bringing to you will be where Chimera is in charge of the camera, and he will be going through the entries that he looked over, and I'll just be adding in my commentary as things that I notice and see. So for now, that's it for the first of our Big Boy Boss Battle showcase
introduction
videos.
videos. Yeah. And also one more thing, I
Yeah.
am interested to see how like just the general aesthetic votes will go in between the three main quote unquote standardly realistic stereotypical FTD realism builder designs, which would be the New Mexico, mine, and the
Yeah.
E150. I'm curious as to how people will vote on those three.
Yeah, I'm curious myself how it will go between like the more realistic designs and the more fantastic designs, like things like the Gradius or the Stingray. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be curious uh, what aesthetic like people get into, but the intention is also that their performance in battle could have some effect on the vote. Like if someone
Of
gives
course.
a good showing, even though they aren't someone's more aesthetically pleasing choice, maybe that person will still vote that way. I mean, it just depends. I am curious, however, to see how those votes go.
Of course. I'm personally a bit more curious about just in general how each category of genres plays out because I think that's a more interesting battle than genre versus genre because that's just I feel like the debate between within a genre of designs is a bit more interesting than
Oh,
the debate
yeah, no disagreement.
between genres.
I'm
So
curious. Yeah, I'll
yeah, I
see
mean
how that
that's
goes.
what I'm more curious about personally.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm Sean, and my co-host
I'm
here.
Tamira.
hmm and this is us signing off for the first of our videos. Expect more soon. Thank you, and as always, have fun.